All right, so get ready, because today we're going way back in time, like over 2,500 years,
Wow.
to dive into a book that's just as relevant now as it was way back then.
Okay.
Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Hmm.
It's kind of mind-blowing how this ancient Chinese military treatise is still studied by everyone, from CEOs to athletes,
Right.
all looking for that strategic edge.
Well, you know what's so fascinating about Sun Tzu's work is it really does transcend the battlefield.
Yeah.
His principles of strategy, planning, and really understanding your opponent can apply to so many different areas.
Uh-huh.
Business, politics, even personal relationships.
That's exactly what we're going to try to uncover in this deep dive, right?
Exactly.
If you want to get a really solid grasp of the art of war, we're going to help you get there.
That's right.
Using excerpts from the text itself
Yeah.
and some really insightful analysis from the introduction and commentary.
So think of it as a journey through military strategy, philosophy, and maybe even a little bit of mystery.
Ooh.
Because first up, we have to tackle the big question. Who was Sun Tzu?
Okay, lay it on me.
Did this mastermind even exist?
Okay, so was he a real person, some legendary figure, or what?
Well, historical accounts are kind of a puzzle.
Okay.
You know, the Shi, which is an early historical record,
Ah.
claims that he served under King Ho Lu of Wu.
Okay.
It even goes so far as to describe him training the king's concubines as a demonstration of his military prowess.
Wait, hold up. Training the king's concubines. I always pictured Sun Tzu as this austere, serious figure.
Right.
But this story paints a much more vivid, almost like humorous picture.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this.
Well, apparently, he divided these women into companies and placed the king's favorites in charge
Oh, no.
and proceeded to teach them military formations.
I can only imagine the king's reaction to that.
Right.
Yeah,
It's a pretty memorable way to make a point.
for sure.
And some scholars actually believe that this story was crafted to highlight Sun Tzu's strategic brilliance.
That makes sense. But, I mean, if the Shichi mentions him, shouldn't that be enough proof that he was a real person?
Right.
Case closed.
No, not so fast.
Okay.
There's another historical text from the same period
Mm-hmm.
called the Tuan,
Okay.
and it makes no mention of Sun Tzu whatsoever.
Oh.
This silence has led some scholars to believe he was actually a fictional creation,
Really?
possibly representing a school of military thought rather than just a single individual.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these conflicting historical accounts.
Right.
So what do we actually know about Sun Tzu?
Well, based on the Shichi, we can kind of speculate that he lived around the 5th century BC,
Okay.
which would make him a contemporary of Confucius.
Huh. That's kind of ironic considering their vastly different areas of expertise, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
He might have had a military career.
Okay.
And of course, he wrote The Art of War,
Obviously.
whether as a real person or as, a representative of a military philosophy.
So the mystery remains. All right, but let's move on to the book itself.
Okay.
What's The Art of War really about? I mean, is it just a collection of battlefield tactics?
It goes way beyond that.
Okay.
The Art of War is really a deep dive into planning, deception,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps most importantly, knowing yourself and your opponent.
Okay.
Sun Tzu actually believed that the ultimate victory is one achieved without fighting.
Oh, wow. Now, that's an idea that transcends time and definitely applies to more than just warfare.
Right.
I can already see why this book appeals to people far beyond just the military realm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of his most famous quotes actually drives this home.
Go.
All warfare is based on deception.
Hmm.
Think about how that applies to, business negotiations.
Yeah.
Creating a perception of your strengths, weaknesses, or even your intentions
Uh-huh.
can give you a significant edge.
Like playing poker. Right.
Exactly.
You want to keep your opponent guessing.
Right.
Make them doubt their own hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this emphasis on deception goes hand in hand with another one of Sun Tzu's powerful ideas.
Okay.
Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
Okay. I'm really intrigued by this idea.
Yeah.
Give me a concrete example of what that might look like outside of the battlefield.
Okay, so imagine a company that wants to acquire a competitor.
Okay.
Instead of engaging in a hostile takeover, which could be very costly and damaging to both sides,
Right.
they might use a series of strategic moves to weaken their competitor's position,
Uh-huh.
making the acquisition seem like the most logical, even inevitable outcome.
Okay.
They could, spread rumors to lower their stock price,
Oh, wow.
poach key employees, or even just subtly hint at their interest in acquiring the company through back channels.
I see, yeah.
By the time they actually make a formal offer,
Yeah.
the competitor's already feeling defeated.
Oh, wow.
Which makes it much easier to negotiate those favorable terms.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
You can see how Sun Tzu's thinking applies even in this world of high finance.
Right.
It's all about playing the long game, thinking several steps ahead.
Precisely. And of course, we can't forget his most iconic line.
Which is?
Know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles, you will never be defeated.
Right.
Think about that in the context of, like, a job interview.
Yeah.
You've researched the company thoroughly.
Uh-huh.
You understand their needs.
Okay.
You're confident in your own skills.
Yeah.
You're much more likely to succeed.
It's almost like common sense.
Yeah.
But how many of us really take the time to fully understand our own strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
let alone those of our opponents, so to speak, in these everyday situations?
Right.
This quote is like a blueprint for success in any competitive arena, really.
It really is.
Yeah.
And to achieve this understanding, Sun Tzu actually dives into what he calls the 5 constant factors that influence warfare.
Okay.
The moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline.
Okay, so this is where it gets a little more complex.
Right.
Let's break these 5 factors down a little bit.
Okay.
What exactly did Sun Tzu mean by the moral law?
He was talking about the importance of the ruler actually having the support of the people.
Okay.
It's about that shared sense of purpose that really unites everyone.
Okay.
It creates a strong foundation for any endeavor,
Uh-huh.
whether it's a military campaign
Right.
or even a social movement.
Okay.
Without this unity, the army, or really any group,
Yeah.
is going to be vulnerable from the inside out.
So it's about more than just having a good strategy.
Right.
You need to have the hearts and minds of the people on your side.
Exactly. And that actually leads us to heaven,
Okay.
which refers to all the natural elements, day and night, weather, the seasons. It's about understanding and adapting to the environment that you're operating in.
Right. You can have the best laid plans, but if you don't factor in, like, the weather or the time of day,
Right.
you could be setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then we have earth, which encompasses the terrain.
Okay.
So, you know, distances, dangers,
Yeah.
open ground versus narrow passes.
Right.
Knowing the battlefield, both literally and figuratively, is crucial for maneuvering effectively.
So it's all about situational awareness,
Yeah.
having a clear picture of the environment you're operating in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then there's a commander,
Okay.
which goes beyond simply being a leader.
Right.
Sun Tzu actually outlines 5 key virtues for a commander: wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
Okay.
You know, think about how these qualities apply to any leader, really, whether it's a CEO,
Right.
a coach,
Yeah.
or even a parent.
It seems like a delicate balance to strike.
Yeah.
You need to be strong and decisive,
Right.
but also compassionate and understanding at the same time.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And finally, we have method and discipline.
Okay.
This is all about organization and control. Having very clear structures and processes, chains of command.
Right.
You know, it ensures that everyone is on the same page and working towards a common goal.
So it's about having the right systems in place.
Yeah.
Making sure things run smoothly and efficiently.
Exactly.
It makes me think about how important a well-structured organization is for any company or team, really.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And while these 5 factors were originally conceived in the context of warfare,
Right.
you can see how they have applications in all sorts of modern settings.
It's amazing how these ancient principles still hold up today.
Yeah.
But let's move from the abstract to the concrete.
Okay.
What are some specific examples from the art of war that illustrate these principles in action?
Okay. Well, one recurring theme is the importance of speed and decisiveness.
Okay.
Sun Tzu famously said, "There has never been a protracted war from which a country has benefited."
Right.
And this applies to everything from startups trying to establish themselves in a competitive market to individuals tackling a complex project.
Yeah.
The longer things drag on, the more resources are drained and the higher the risk of failure becomes.
That makes me think about the importance of setting, like, clear deadlines and milestones.
Right.
Because it's so easy to get bogged down in the details.
Exactly.
But Sun Tzu would probably advise us to prioritize the most impactful actions and execute them swiftly.
Absolutely.
Mm.
He also places a huge emphasis on logistics.
Okay.
He famously said, "An army marches on its stomach."
Right.
He even compares the value of enemy provisions to one's own, saying that they were worth 20 times as much.
Wow.
Just because of the challenges of transporting supplies.
That's a fascinating insight into the importance of supply chains, even in ancient warfare.
Right.
It makes you realize that even the grandest strategies can be undermined by logistical failures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those logistical challenges are just as relevant today.
Huh?
Whether we're talking about global trade, disaster relief efforts, or even planning a large-scale event.
Okay, so we've got speed, decisiveness, and the importance of logistics.
Right.
But what about when things go wrong? What are the dangers that leaders need to be aware of?
Sun Tzu actually outlines 6 calamities that can befall an army.
Oh, boy.
Flight, insubordination, collapse, ruin, disorganization, and rout.
Okay.
These are all essentially failures of leadership, not just bad luck on the battlefield.
Wow. That's a pretty sobering list.
It is.
Can you give me an example of one of these calamities in action? I'm especially curious about insubordination.
Okay.
What did that look like in Sun Tzu's time?
He actually tells a cautionary tale about a General Tianpu,
Okay.
whose soldiers lost all respect for him and even started mocking him by riding donkeys around the camp.
Oh, no.
This blatant disrespect ultimately led to the army's defeat.
You know, hearing a story like that makes you realize the human element in all of this.
Right.
It's not just about having the best weapons or the most cunning strategy. If you lose the trust and respect of your people, it's game over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It highlights the importance of maintaining discipline, fostering morale, and really building a cohesive unit.
But Sun Tzu wasn't just about control and punishment, was he?
No, not at all.
He recognized the importance of leveraging individual strengths.
He did.
He had this fascinating line about the skillful employer of men.
Yes.
Using the wise man, the brave man, the covetous man, and even the stupid man.
Yeah, it's one of his most insightful observations about human nature.
That is.
He understood that every individual has a role to play.
Right.
Even those who might not seem like obvious assets at first glance.
Yeah.
The key is to understand their specific qualities.
Okay.
And figure out how to leverage them effectively.
So it's about building a team where different personalities and abilities can work together.
Right.
Where everyone feels valued and contributes to the overall success.
Precisely. And of course, Sun Tzu stresses the importance of exploiting weaknesses. He provides this really detailed analysis of different terrains and how to maneuver in each.
Okay.
Emphasizing that a keen understanding of your opponent's vulnerabilities is crucial for victory.
Can you give me some examples of how he uses terrain to his advantage?
Sure.
I'm picturing some really clever strategies here.
Yeah, he advises, on hemmed-in ground, resort to stratagem.
Okay.
A classic example of this is Hannibal's escape from the Romans using flaming oxen.
Oh, wow.
He was trapped in a valley, so he tied burning torches to the horns of oxen and drove them toward the Roman lines at night.
Wow.
This created chaos and allowed his army to escape.
Wow, that's some serious out-of-the-box thinking.
It is.
What about a different terrain strategy?
Well, he also says, on desperate ground, fight. This might seem counterintuitive.
It does.
But he understood that sometimes putting your back against the wall can force your troops to fight with more ferocity.
Right.
A great example of this is Han Xin's victory, where he deliberately put his army in a position where they had to fight for their lives.
Wow.
And this actually inspired them to achieve an incredible victory.
So even in seemingly hopeless situations, there's a strategic way to turn things around.
Exactly.
It's about finding those unconventional solutions, playing the hand you're dealt to the best of your ability.
Exactly. Sun Tzu is constantly reminding us that warfare, and by extension, any kind of conflict or challenge, is about adaptation, flexibility, and finding those unexpected paths to victory.
And speaking of unexpected, we can't forget about Sun Tzu's emphasis on spies.
Yeah.
This is where things get really intriguing and maybe even a little controversial.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yes. The world of espionage.
Oh, good.
Sun Tzu actually dedicates an entire chapter to the use of spies, outlining different types and how to manage them effectively.
Okay.
He even provides this detailed classification of them: local, inward, converted, doomed, and surviving.
Okay, I have to admit, the whole spy thing has always seemed a bit shady to me.
Right.
It feels like you're stepping into this world of secrets and deception.
It can be.
But I'm willing to hear Sun's out.
Okay.
Break down these spy categories for me.
All right, so local spies are recruited from the inhabitants of the area where you're fighting. They provide valuable intel about the terrain, local customs, and the enemy's movements.
So they're like your eyes and ears on the ground.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about inward spies?
Okay, these are officials or servants within the enemy's ranks who can either be bribed or persuaded to betray their side.
Right.
They provide inside information about the enemy's plans, weaknesses, internal dynamics.
So it's about exploiting existing cracks in your opponent's structure.
Right.
Finding those individuals who might be susceptible to persuasion or coercion.
Exactly. Then there are converted spies.
Converted.
Yes, these are actually enemy spies who have been captured and then turned to work for your side. They can offer a unique perspective and be incredibly valuable.
Okay.
Especially for disinformation campaigns.
That's a fascinating concept, turning your enemy's weapon against them.
Right.
Okay, what about doomed spies?
With doomed spies.
That sounds ominous.
It is.
Yeah.
These are spies who are intentionally fed false information.
Oh, wow.
With the intention of being captured by the enemy.
Really?
And spreading that disinformation.
So it's a form of psychological warfare.
Exactly.
Slaying on the enemy's uncertainty and paranoia.
Precisely. And finally, we have surviving spies.
Surviving spies.
Yes, these are the ones who successfully infiltrate the enemy's camp, gather information, and report back to you.
Yep.
They're your most trusted sources of intelligence, providing firsthand accounts of what's happening on the ground.
It's remarkable how Sun Tzu developed this whole system of espionage.
It really is.
But he was clearly not afraid to be ruthless.
Right.
He even states that if a secret piece of news is divulged by a spy before the time is ripe, both the spy and the person they told must be put to death.
Yes, that's one of the most chilling passages in The Art of War.
It is.
It shows how seriously he took the issue of secrecy and the potentially devastating consequences of a leak.
You know, loose lips sink ships, or in this case, entire armies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very stark reminder that even in the pursuit of victory, there are these moral and ethical lines that need to be considered.
Okay, let's move on to a less grim topic.
Right?
Do you have an example of how spies were used effectively in ancient China?
There's a great story about Pan Chao, a general who used a combination of a fire attack and the strategic manipulation of information to achieve victory. He released prisoners with very specific instructions to spread rumors, creating confusion and weakening the enemy's resolve before he actually launched his attack.
So it was like this multi-pronged strategy that combined military action with psychological warfare.
Exactly.
He used every tool at his disposal, including information itself, to achieve his objective.
Exactly.
It's incredible how much depth there is to Sun Tzu's thinking, even though The Art of War is such a concise text.
It is.
It's packed with these dense little nuggets of wisdom that are as relevant today as they were centuries ago.
It really is a testament to the enduring power of strategic thinking. And Sun Tzu's really keen understanding of human nature.
It really is. So we've been unpacking, you know, some of Sun Tzu's most famous quotes and strategic principles.
Right.
But it's kind of incredible how The Art of War itself is structured.
Yeah.
As this like series of short, almost poetic chapters, you know.
Yeah. Each one is like a treasure chest filled with these potent nuggets of wisdom.
Right.
I imagine ancient generals, you know, poring over these chapters, finding, you know, guidance and inspiration in the heat of battle.
Yeah, it's like he anticipated people needing to access these insights quickly under pressure.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and one chapter that really stands out to me in terms of its modern relevance is Waging War. It's really this deep dive into the actual conduct of warfare with these, like, timeless lessons that really resonate even in today's world.
Okay, so let's explore this chapter.
Okay.
What does Sun Tzu have to say about the actual execution of warfare?
Right.
I'm curious to see how this advice translates beyond the battlefield.
Well, he's very laser focused on the cost of conflict, both in terms of resources and manpower. He really stresses the importance of speed and efficiency, warning that when your weapons are dulled, your ardor damped, your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity.
So it's not just about winning battles. It's about winning them quickly, decisively before you drain all your resources and leave yourself vulnerable. Right.
He even advises against raising a second levy of troops or loading supply wagons more than twice.
Really?
Yeah, the idea is to move swiftly, living off the land as much as possible.
That sounds incredibly risky.
It does.
What happens if you, like, run out of supplies?
Well, he actually advocates for foraging on the enemy.
Oh, okay.
Stating that 1 cartload of their provisions is equivalent to 20 of your own.
Ah, right, because of the logistical nightmare of transporting everything from your own territory.
Exactly.
This is a brilliant way to streamline your operations and turn your enemy's resources against them.
Exactly. It's a really fascinating insight into the importance of supply chains, even in ancient warfare.
For sure.
And this concept of speed and efficiency has such clear parallels in today's, fast-paced world.
It does. It really does.
Right. It makes me think about, like, the challenges that startups face. They often have very limited resources.
Right.
And they need to achieve this, like, rapid growth in order to survive in a very competitive market.
Think about how many startups fail. Not because their idea was bad, but because they ran out of funding or momentum before they could gain traction.
Exactly. They become vulnerable to competitors who are faster, more agile, perhaps more ruthless.
Yeah. Or even consider, like, a complex project with a tight deadline, dragging things out, getting bogged down in endless revisions or approvals can lead to burnout, dwindling morale, and ultimately failure to deliver.
Exactly.
I imagine Sun Tzu would advise us to, like, cut through the noise, identify the most impactful actions, and just execute them swiftly.
Absolutely.
Be adaptable, be decisive, don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. That's a great takeaway.
It is.
For anyone, regardless of their field.
Absolutely.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about deception.
Okay.
I mean, Sun seems to embrace this concept wholeheartedly.
He does.
Almost reveling in the art of trickery.
Right. Yes, deception is very much a central theme in the art of war.
It is.
One of his most famous lines, all warfare is based on deception. He talks about making your opponent misjudge your strength, leading them into traps, and just ruthlessly exploiting their weaknesses.
Can seem kind of Machiavellian, this idea of using deception to achieve your goals.
It can be.
Yeah.
But Sun Tzu stresses that deception isn't just about lying or being sneaky. It's about using strategy and intelligence to create a situation where your opponent makes the wrong decisions. Decisions that ultimately benefit you.
Do you have an example of how he puts this principle into practice?
Yeah, he talks about using terrain to your advantage, advising, when we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. And this might involve, like, spreading misinformation, creating diversions, or even staging a fake retreat.
I see.
The goal is to sow confusion and doubt in your opponent's mind, making them hesitant and vulnerable.
I could see how that kind of, like, psychological warfare would be effective.
Right?
It's about playing with perceptions.
Exactly.
Creating an illusion of reality that serves your strategic goals.
Yeah.
But it definitely raises some ethical questions.
It does. It's important to remember the context in which Sun Tzu was writing. He was living in a time of, constant warfare, where survival was often at stake. Deception wasn't necessarily seen as morally wrong. It was more like a tool for survival. A way to gain an advantage. In a very dangerous world.
Okay, so maybe in that context, deception was like a necessary evil.
Maybe so.
But how do we apply these principles to, like, the modern world, where we're hopefully not facing, like, these life or death situations on a daily basis?
It's not about condoning manipulation or dishonesty. But it's more about recognizing that every interaction, from a business negotiation to a casual conversation,
has an element of strategy to it.
I can see that.
We're constantly sending signals, interpreting cues, and making decisions based on what we perceive to be true.
So it's about being aware of those subtle ways that we influence each other. And using that awareness to navigate, like, these social and professional situations more effectively.
Exactly. It's about being intentional about the messages that we're sending, understanding the power dynamics at play, and really using our intelligence to achieve our desired outcomes.
It's almost like we're all playing a strategic game, even if we're not consciously aware of it. And Sun Tzu would be like a master player.
Oh, absolutely.
Observing, analyzing, anticipating his opponent's every move.
He would be.
Yeah.
But remember, knowing your opponent is only half of the equation.
Right.
Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of knowing yourself, just as strongly.
That's a really powerful idea.
It is.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own biases.
Our own assumptions about how the world works, our own perception of our abilities.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Sun Tzu's really challenging us to step outside of ourselves, to like honestly assess our strengths and weaknesses, and to see the world and ourselves from these multiple perspectives.
So how can we practically apply this idea of knowing ourselves in our lives? It seems like, like a lifelong journey of self-discovery.
It is. It starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Just being brutally honest about what we're truly good at and where we tend to, make mistakes.
Right.
It's about recognizing our emotional triggers, our values, and how we react under pressure.
Right.
Once we understand those things about ourselves, we can start to, make more informed decisions, play to our strengths, and mitigate our weaknesses.
So it's about having a realistic assessment of our capabilities.
Right.
Not letting like ego or pride lead us into situations where we're out of our depth.
Right.
Right. It's also about understanding our motivations, our desires, and our fears.
Okay.
What are we truly striving for? What are we afraid of?
Yeah.
Once we answer these questions honestly, we can start to align our actions with our values. And really create a life that feels authentic and fulfilling.
It seems like knowing yourself is just as much about emotional intelligence.
It is.
As it is about strategic thinking.
Absolutely. Sun Tzu understood that warfare and really life itself is not simply a battle of wits, but also a battle of wills.
It's about mastering our own internal landscape. As much as we master like the external world.
Exactly.
Right.
And this brings us to another key aspect of the art of war. Leadership.
Leadership, okay.
Sun Tzu actually devotes a considerable amount of attention to the qualities of an effective leader.
He does. He outlines virtues like wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. Yeah, it's so interesting to see how he like blends what we might consider like soft skills with, the more traditional military virtues.
Right. It's about finding that right balance between those qualities, isn't it?
It is.
Being decisive and courageous when needed.
Right.
But also compassionate and understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
He also emphasizes the importance of leading by example.
He does.
Inspiring your followers through your actions rather than just your words.
Think about that story of him training the king's concubines.
Right.
He don't just lecture them on military formations. He got down in the trenches with them, so to speak, and demonstrated his methods firsthand.
Yes, he was willing to put himself on the line to show them that he actually believed in what he was teaching.
Exactly.
That kind of authenticity goes a long way in building trust and respect.
Absolutely. And he talks about the importance of treating your followers with fairness and understanding, recognizing their humanity, even amidst like the chaos of war.
So it's not just about being a brilliant strategist or a charismatic figurehead.
Right.
It's about being a good human being, treating people with dignity and respect.
Exactly.
Even in the most challenging circumstances.
And I think that's a message that resonates even more strongly in today's world.
I agree.
Where we're, increasingly looking for leaders who are not only competent and effective, but also ethical and compassionate.
Sun Tzu was more than just a military genius.
He was.
He was also a philosopher of leadership.
Absolutely.
And his insights on leadership are as relevant today as they were centuries ago.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From battlefield tactics to the philosophy of leadership. Right. It's amazing how these ancient principles still hold up in our modern world.
It really is.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of the more, intriguing and perhaps even controversial aspects of Sun Tzu's thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are definitely some thought-provoking ideas that we need to unpack.
Okay.
So let's explore those in our final segment.
We've explored so much of Sun Tzu's wisdom already.
We have.
From battlefield maneuvers to the art of leadership.
Yeah.
But you mentioned some thought-provoking and maybe even like controversial aspects of his thinking.
Yeah.
I'm ready to dive into those.
Well, one that really stands out to me is his perspective on like exploiting weaknesses.
Okay.
Sun Tzu really doesn't shy away from advocating for hitting your opponent where it hurts. Even if it feels a bit ruthless.
Yeah.
He's all about achieving victory. And that sometimes means, being aggressive and taking advantage of vulnerabilities.
That's definitely a different take on warfare than, like, the more idealistic notions of honor and chivalry that we sometimes hear about.
Yeah, it's a much more pragmatic approach.
It is. It's a much more pragmatic approach.
Exactly. Sun Tzu is all about pragmatism.
Right.
You know, about achieving victory by any means necessary.
Right.
He even says, attack him where he is unprepared, appear where you are not expected. Unpredictability and keeping your opponent off balance are key.
I can see how this translates to the modern world.
Right.
Especially in, like, business or politics.
Absolutely.
You know, think about how much effort goes into, like, researching competitors.
Yeah.
Identifying their weaknesses.
Right.
And then exploiting them to gain market share or, you know, win an election.
It's become, like, a fundamental part of competitive strategy.
It really has.
But it does raise those ethical questions.
It does, yeah.
You know, where do we draw the line between, like, strategic maneuvering and outright manipulation?
That's a great point.
Right.
I mean, Sun Tzu doesn't really offer a clear answer to that question.
Yeah.
He was writing from this, like, military perspective.
Right.
Where the stakes were incredibly high.
Yeah.
You know, often involving, like, matters of life and death.
Absolutely.
Right.
So maybe we need to be mindful of the context when
Yeah.
we're applying his principles to other areas of life.
For sure.
It's not a license to be unethical or ruthless.
Right.
But it is a reminder that understanding power dynamics, you know, identifying vulnerabilities and using that knowledge strategically is, like, really crucial for success.
It's about being, like, a savvy player in the game, knowing the rules and being prepared to make, you know, tough decisions.
Exactly.
But it's also about recognizing that there are consequences to our actions.
Yeah.
And that we should strive to, you know, operate with integrity.
I think Sun Tzu would agree with that.
Yeah, I think he would.
Another aspect of his thinking that I think is both, you know, intriguing and potentially disturbing is his, like, wholehearted belief in the importance of spies.
Right.
He dedicates a significant portion of the art of war to this.
Yes.
You know, to the use of spies, detailing different types and strategies for managing them.
We touched on this earlier, and I have to admit, like, the whole concept of espionage still makes me a little bit uneasy.
It can be, yeah.
It feels inherently, like, secretive and deceptive.
Right.
You know, but I'm willing to, you know, keep an open mind.
Right.
So why did Sun Tzu place so much emphasis on spies?
He was just so adamant about the value of intelligence gathering. He even states that if you are ignorant of the enemy's condition but are perfectly informed about your own, your chances of winning or losing are equal. If, on the other hand, you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle.
So it's not just about having a strong army or a clever strategy.
Right.
It's about having the right information at the right time.
It is. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Yeah, for sure.
And Sun Tzu truly believed that spies were, like, the key to unlocking that knowledge.
Okay.
They were his eyes and ears, providing him with these insights.
Right.
That would have been impossible to obtain through other means.
I can understand that in the context of, like, warfare.
Right.
Where information about enemy movements, troop strength, you know, strategic plans could mean the difference between victory and defeat.
Exactly.
But how do we, like, reconcile this concept of espionage with, you know, our modern day values? It feels like something out of, like, a spy thriller, not something that we should be, like, aspiring to in our everyday lives.
Well, it's important to remember that the methods of intelligence gathering have evolved significantly since Sun Tzu's time.
Yeah.
We're not talking about sending, you know, covert agents behind enemy lines anymore.
Right.
But the underlying principles of observation, analysis, and, you know, strategic information gathering are still very much relevant.
You're right. Think about businesses conducting market research.
Right.
You know, political campaigns, analyzing voter data,
Right.
or even journalists investigating a story.
Absolutely.
You know, they're all engaging in a form of intelligence gathering. They're trying to uncover information that will give them an advantage.
Exactly. And while we might not be using the same, like, tactics as ancient spies, the principles of being observant, discerning patterns, and piecing together information to make those, like, informed decisions are timeless.
It makes you wonder, like, what Sun Tzu would make of the digital age.
Oh, I know.
With, like, its vast amounts of data being collected and analyzed.
Right.
Would he see it as, like, a spy master's dream come true?
I think he'd be fascinated by it. He'd probably view all that data as a gold mine of information that could be used to, understand human behavior, predict future trends, and really gain, like, a strategic advantage.
He might even say something like, know your customers, know your competitors, and you shall dominate the marketplace.
That sounds exactly like something he would say.
Right. So as we wrap up this incredible deep dive into the art of war, what's the most important takeaway you want our listeners to, walk away with?
I think it's this realization that strategic thinking isn't just for generals and CEOs. It's for everyone.
It really is.
Whether you're negotiating a deal, leading a team, or even just trying to achieve, like, a personal goal. Sun Tzu's principles of planning, knowing yourself and your opponent, adaptability, and yes, even, like, that calculated deception can provide these really valuable insights.
It's a reminder that we're all, like, players in a strategic game.
We are.
Even if we're not always consciously aware of the rules. And understanding those rules, honing our strategic thinking skills, can empower us to make, better decisions and achieve greater success in all areas of our life.
It really can. And while some of Sun Tzu's methods might seem, a little harsh or even unethical by today's standards, his underlying philosophy of strategic thinking remains, like, as relevant and as powerful
as ever.
It's
amazing how a book written over 2,500 years ago can still speak to us so directly.
I know.
Offering, like, guidance and wisdom for navigating, the complexities of the modern world.
It's really a testament to Sun Tzu's genius and the enduring power of strategic thinking.
It is. It really is.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the art of war.
Okay.
We hope you've enjoyed this journey through, ancient wisdom and modern-day relevance.
Yes.
Until next time, keep strategizing, keep learning, and keep exploring the fascinating world of ideas.
Absolutely.